So it's breakfast at day 4, and we're going back to Arlington to try to see the Marine Corps and Iwo Jima Memorial, and then we're going to the Udvar-Hazy Center at Dulles International Airport, which is the second of the 2 Smithsonian Air and Space Museums. So we'll see how today goes. Technically, this is our last full day in Washington. It was a total of a 6-day trip, but 1 day was travel up, and of course 1 day's travel back. So that means there's only 4 full days here. So we'll see what it has in store for us, and hopefully we end the trip with a bang.
Earlier, don't talk about it, but the Netherlands bell tower, the Netherlands parallel, will be coming up on the driver's side of the vehicle in just a moment. There it is. It rings at the top of the hour. There are 50 bells. Each one represents a state here in the United States. In 1950, when we got the Carolyn, it came with 49 bells. All right,
So we finally made it to the Marine Corps Iwo Jima Memorial, and what a shock. That is also under construction. I swear, they work on everything in Washington, D.C. in October. But we made it. After paying $15 for a trolley to take us here, but we made it. So we're leaving the Arlington National Cemetery and we're driving to the Udvar-Hazy Center, which is the second half of the Smithsonian's Air and Space Museum. It's located at Washington Dulles International Airport. So it's like a 40-minute drive from where we're staying to go see it.
Who knows what they don't get? Is it? Yeah. Buried and then say, oh, now I got to remove this there. You know, a lot of notes. It took about 9 to 10. 3 days after 7 1, 6 1. The Russians said they get money with their run.
So I felt like this plane needed a special mention. This is the only thing in the museum that was actually at Pearl Harbor, Hawaii when it was attacked on December 7th, 1941. And this thing is in terrible condition. It has holes in its wings. It has broken windows all over it. And this is why historical items like this should be preserved, because it didn't look like this even after the battle. It looks like this because they stored it outside for years afterwards, which it talks about right on the sign. And right here you can see it's the only aircraft in the museum that was present at Pearl Harbor, and it was sent to look for survivors. So this is the 7-story observation tower at Udvar-Hazy Center. And what's cool about it is that it overlooks one of the runways of Dulles. And you can stand here and watch aircraft land at Dulles. United Airlines. So this is a very interesting exhibit. This is the Bell H-13J that President Dwight D. Eisenhower flew in, which makes it the world's first, or at least the first for the United States, presidential helicopter. And this is the real one. It's kind of funny that it's an Air Force helicopter, because these days the Marines fly the president, not the Air Force. So we're back in the hotel at the end of day 4. Today was probably overall the best day that we have had since we've been up here. Arlington National Cemetery was fantastic today for a couple of reasons, which we'll get into in just a moment. We actually paid to take the tram today. It was $15 and it takes you all over the cemetery. It's a hop-on, hop-off kind of deal. So each bus stop or tram stop, if you will, has a 15-minute wait time. So these things run every 15 minutes. You get on one, you go to, say, the Tomb of the Unknown Soldier, you get off. 15 minutes later, another one shows up, you can get on it. And then when it gets somewhere you want to go, you just get off of it. So you can hop on and hop off these things all day. It's basically like a little bus service inside the cemetery. And it allowed us to finally see everything we wanted to see. Got to see Audie Murphy's gravesite. Audie Murphy, the most decorated American soldier of World War II. I got to see the Nurses Memorial. We got to see Jonathan Letterman's gravesite as well. He's kind of the father of modern pre-hospital medicine. Way back in the day, whenever a soldier got wounded on the battlefield, they just took him to the nearest hospital to try to treat him. Jonathan Letterman is the father of the idea that they can be stabilized in the field. So rather than take them to a hospital immediately, they would take them to a tent that was set up to do a quick surgery, something like that, stabilize them, and then move them on, in the same sense that we have ambulances to stabilize people today. We also got to see a huge plot of graves that were marked as unknown, which was just totally humbling to think about all these soldiers that were not identified and whose families never got closure. And it was located up on the hill above the Tomb of the Unknowns. So all that stuff was really cool, but the coolest thing about Arlington Cemetery today was an old African-American gentleman, as most would call him, named Leroy. But he wasn't African-American at all. He was from a country called Belize. And Leroy was one of the tram workers. He was in charge of taking tickets and managing the line at the tram stop at the Tomb of the Unknowns today. And Leroy did something no other tram stop worker did. He made a line of veterans and a line of regular people. He would ask you if you were a veteran when we walked up, and then he'd put you in the veteran line if you were, which didn't make any sense to us at first. But then he said, "Can I have everyone's attention? My name is Leroy, and I am not an American citizen, as my accent indicates. I came to this country 30 years ago, and I went to one of your nation's greatest colleges, and I graduated. I have 2 master's degrees. I've lived here for 30 years, and I worked for 12 years for the government and the rest in the private sector for my own company. I have made all the money I could ever ask for, and I'm going back home to where I was born. But before I go, I want to do one last thing. I want to thank the American people for what they did for me, for allowing me to come here, get an education here, live and work here for 30 years, and make enough money to go home and live out the rest of my years in my home country without having to work." He said at first he couldn't think of what group of people to thank. And then he said, "I found out that Arlington Cemetery had a high volume of veteran visitors. I could think of no other group of people to thank for my experience in the United States than the veterans that defended it and defended me while I was here. I have came out of retirement only to work here so that I can personally shake the hand of every veteran that I can find before I leave and go back home. So now I want to thank every veteran for what this country's done for me and for their service and sacrifice." And he walks down the line of veterans that he has lined up and shakes every one of their hands and thanks every one of them personally for their service and his ability to live here free, get an education, work for his own business, and retire. He then continues on by shaking the hands of the wife and children of those veterans and everyone that's related to those veterans. and thanking them for their sacrifice as well. And then finally he says, in Leroy's line, veterans board first. If anybody that is not a veteran has a problem with that, that's just too bad. Because truth be told, this is my line, and I don't have to ask permission. Veterans, you can now board the tram. So, most of these veterans began taking pictures with him, some of them in tears, having their wives or daughters or sons take pictures with this man. And it was just a moving experience watching that. And then someone finally asked him where he was going back home to, and he said Belize. That's how he found out where he was going to. Just an overall moving experience. So from there, we went to the Udvar-Hazy Center, and we saw the real Enola Gay B-29 that dropped one of the atomic bombs during World War II. I can now say I've seen both of those aircraft because I've also seen Boxcar in person, which is another B-29 that dropped a bomb during World War II on Japan, and it is at the Air Force Museum in Dayton, Ohio. We saw the real Space Shuttle Discovery and many, many other aircraft, which you saw in the footage. I could sit here and talk about it all day, but we don't have that much time. The only bummer about the Udvar-Hazy Center was that the Apollo 11 command module was not present to view, which I was really excited about, and then really bummed about that they didn't have it. They did have a test module from Apollo 11, though, so I did get to see part of it, I guess you could say. Overall, just a really great day, and we'll see what tomorrow has in store. I think we're going to Luray Caverns on the way back, and that'll be about the only other thing that we do. So stay tuned for that, and that video will also contain the final thoughts for the trip. Instagram links in the description. As always, like and subscribe, guys, and have a nice day.